I don't really understand like the legal requirements around why everyone is allowed to promote a vitamin that, you know, really like if you are deficient in a nutrient or if you have a chronic condition, like that should be something that you go through your doctor or your dietitian, your nutritionist
Yeah.
to find out
Well,
rather than someone
here's
who's been paid on an Instagram ad to do it.
here's the thing. I do something like that, I'd be thrown out of my professional bodies. So the British Dietetic Association would quite rightly evict me in a nanosecond, and so would the Association for Nutrition. Absolutely, they'd be absolutely within their rights to do that. So if you don't have anything to lose because you're not going to be thrown out of a professional body because you haven't joined one in the first place and you haven't done the study that requires you to join, then you've got nothing to lose. And so what's going to happen to you? No one's going to come and get you because there's nobody challenging you, and you haven't got any rules and regulations to abide by.
Welcome to the Wellness Report. My name is Susan Owens. Today we're going to be talking about the sunshine vitamin, all of its benefits, and the things we don't really know about vitamin D as well. Joining us to talk about that is registered nutritionist and dietitian Amanda Ursell. We now have several large trials that are showing that there's almost very little benefit in vitamin D in healthy adults. There are also studies that suggest that vitamin D does nothing to prevent bone fractures or illness. But I do feel like when I see everything about supplements and all these trials, I'm always seeing different answers because, you know, vitamin D is kind of made out to us like it's the wonder drug almost, like you're meant to take at all times. So why don't you run us through like kind of the actual facts we know about vitamin D?
Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you about what happens in the UK. So that is
Mm-hmm.
quite a specific part of the world. And the advice that we have in the UK, because I'm a UK dietitian, is very particular to that part of the world. And why that's important will become evident as I speak to you. So vitamin D is a really unusual vitamin because we can make it in our bodies. And we make it in our bodies through the action of sunlight, specifically ultraviolet B rays, when they hit the skin surface between the months of April and September. And that's because the United Kingdom is at the latitude it is. So that's during those months at this latitude in the UK, that's when we are able to convert through the action of the UVB rays on our skin a pre-vitamin D into an active form of vitamin D, which then whizzes around in our blood to our liver and our kidney, and it's formed again, it's changed again into vitamin D3, which is called cholecalciferol. And the amount of vitamin D we make in the summer is enough to see us all through the summer if we're generally healthy, with the exception of some at-risk groups, which we can chat about in some detail. So during the winter months, it's very difficult to make vitamin D. In fact, you can't do that in the UK. You can't do that from the sunlight. And in addition to that, it's difficult to get enough through foods naturally because there are very few foods that contain vitamin D, those being things like oily fish, like salmon, for example, and mackerel. Eggs contain some, and then we have some fortified foods, so breakfast cereals, for example, and plant milks, which are fortified. So it's quite difficult to get enough vitamin D for the general population to see you through the winter. So during the winter months, the government recommend that the general healthy population from the age of 5 onwards consider a supplement during the winter months. Now, there are groups of people in the at-risk section where the government actually advises those people to take vitamin D supplements all year round. And they would be people, for example, who aren't going to be exposing their sun to the 10 to 15 minutes they need each day on their forearms and their face outside for those summer months. So, for example, maybe if you're in a care home and you're living in an institution, you don't get outside, or perhaps if you do go outside, but you cover your skin. And for those people, the government advises that you actually have a supplement all year round. We're not talking about a big one. We're talking about 10 micrograms a day, which is a recommended nutrient intake. So we're not talking about big supplements. We're just talking about 10 micrograms a day. Now, there's also a group which is the children who are from 0 to 4. So children who are exclusively breastfed are recommended to have a supplement of 8.5 micrograms a day up until 6 months. And if at that stage they're having 500 mils of fortified baby infant formula, then they don't need to take the supplement until they stop having that amount. But if they're not having that, then it's recommended from the age of 1 that that supplement goes up to 10 micrograms a day all year round until they're 4 years of age. So there's some really, it's a little bit complex, but you'll be glad to know that all of that information is on NHS and the NHS side.
Yeah.
If you put in NHS vitamin D, that will all come up. And then there is one more group, which are people who would be considered to be at risk. And I'm going to just read you this official information from the website, the NHS website. It says, if you have dark skin, for example, you have African Caribbean or South Asian background, then you may be not able to make enough vitamin D from the sun during the winter months, and you may consider a vitamin D supplement. So those are the particular at-risk groups, as it were.
It's kind of like what we may have always been told, I think, growing up, is that you take it in the winter. But I think the thing that always confused me is that it almost seems like the baseline, like kind of bare minimum vitamin that maybe everyone needs to take, but then you need to take it in partnership with other things maybe, and then that will help you with everything else. If you just took just vitamin D, like or D3, is that okay?
Yes, I mean, obviously, if you're following a vegan lifestyle, then vitamin D3 would be probably sourced from animal sources. So you may prefer to take a vitamin D2 supplement, which is from a plant source. But it is that recommendation is a vitamin D on its own. So if you get into a situation where, for example, you have a health issue such as osteomalacia, which is weakened bones. So in children, that would manifest as rickets. And as we get older, if you had osteomalacia and you had weakened bones, you might feel painful bones and pain in your muscles as well. Then it would probably be recommended that you would have vitamin D with calcium. And then if you had osteopenia, which is the forerunner to osteoporosis, then you probably be under your doctor, and they may recommend vitamin D with other bone building supplements as well, and other treatments to help to reduce any further progression. So it's very much it's very important to look at which group you fall into, and where necessary to get medical advice, because it's not just this kind of broad brushstroke, everybody's the same. It's really not. You need to be quite specific about your aims and your goals. But at no point does the general advice exceed the recommended nutrient intake of 10 micrograms a day. So the studies that I've looked at, for example, I think you and I were discussing beforehand a study in America which showed that there was no point taking supplements every day. Well, broadly, I think a lot that is generally accepted, and the amount that was being taken in one of the particular studies that you showed me was the equivalent of 50 micrograms a day, which is way more than we would recommend people who are generally healthy take. Even if it is just during winter months. So I think I would broadly agree that we don't need those kind of amounts in the general healthy population all year round. It's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, because I've seen various experts and stuff even speak on other podcasts, and they've kind of said that, there was an expert in neurology, and they said they had prescribed vitamin D for people to take so they could help them sleep better,
Mm.
which I, I feel like, I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, and I do almost feel like the test subject for a lot of these topics that I talk about, because I'll always say, like, oh, well, I didn't grow up with the NHS as an option. So the idea of going to get blood tests just to see if I was deficient in any nutrients growing up, I mean, if I was otherwise completely healthy, I just never would have done that. But it would be a case of, oh, it's winter now, so I'll take vitamin D, or, oh, I feel like I maybe should have more omega-3, so I'll take cod liver oil, all these kind of things. And it's like almost like self-diagnosing in a way. But I guess I don't know how harmful that is. Like, I don't know how harmful it is for you maybe to think like, oh, I struggle to get to sleep, so I'll take magnesium. And
Yeah,
then you just
you're,
end up
you're
in
right.
this cycle of taking like a cocktail of supplements that you don't even need. I have no idea.
I think that's a very good point. And the cocktail effect can potentially take you into dangerous areas. So if your doctor found that did some blood tests, maybe just randomly they were doing them for something else, and they find that your serum levels of vitamin D3 are below normal or insufficient, they may well advise quite a high level of vitamin D for a discrete period of time. So that may be quite a high dose and way more than 10 micrograms a day. But just for the normal normal person, just for the average
Yeah,
person, sorry, who
that's all right.
is going about their daily lives and is thinking about taking a fish oil supplement and a multivitamin supplement, and or maybe I'll have a vitamin D as well. When you start looking at the high dose vitamin Ds, and you're also having it from a fish, it's also inherently in a fish oil supplement. So you'd probably get about 5 micrograms in a cod liver oil supplement, then you probably get 5 micrograms in a daily multivitamin and mineral supplement. And then if you were also taking a high dose vitamin D just off your own back, that may be pushing you into levels which are too high. And certainly once you get to 100 micrograms a day, that's too much. So it's really about really bearing in mind that 10 micrograms a day is a recommended intake in the UK. You don't need to go above that if you're just looking to have a general healthy boost to your overall intake. And we do need to remember those at-risk groups, and we need to remember the people who don't need it during the summer. So, as I said to you, it's a very nuanced area and sort of more complicated than, say, for example, folic acid is a B vitamin that is recommended that women of childbearing age supplement with that. And it's just that's it. That's just a recommendation. And it's quite straightforward. But vitamin D does come with all these ifs and buts and which group you fall into, which makes it more nuanced. And then, of course, as you rightly say, we get loads of information from all over the place, bombarding us. We need magnesium for sleep. And it goes into areas where, does vitamin D help boost immunity? There isn't enough evidence as far as the UK recommendations go at the moment to say take extra vitamin D because it's good for your immune system. We don't have that. There's not enough clarity around that for the very august bodies who review this kind of clinical data to make a statement. So
Yeah, I feel like I'd almost be your worst nightmare because I I always saw it as, well, I'm Irish, I'm very pale, and to the point where I do not tan, so I will always be wearing Factor 50, and I live in the UK. So in my mind, I was like, I should take vitamin D realistically all year round. And then if someone around me is ill, I'll take 2 tablets of vitamin D because I'll be like, oh, just so I don't get it. And I think then on top of that, then I would look at social media ads that are saying like, oh, you should have this gummy to take this, or you should do this to do this. And I would then try, look up, is there any science in this? Is this the right thing to do? And obviously everything on Google says, oh, well, we don't know. Like no one knows. And it's just like the constant advertisement of everything on top of me just going, oh, I'll just take a vitamin D tablet, it's totally fine. But like, surely that's
you make a,
dangerous.
yeah, well, you make a very good point, and I would always say I have a course in nutrition for beginners, as it were, which is one it's a very structured course. It's done in association with the Association for Nutrition, so it's completely science based. And the one thing that I really have to hit home when I'm giving my course is that it's where you look for your information on nutrition. So I would say don't just randomly search in a search engine. You need to know what you're looking at. So, for example, the British Dietetic Association is a trusted source of information. I would always trust the NHS website. So if you put in, for example, NHS vitamin C, NHS vitamin D, you will get a trusted source of information on that. Unfortunately, it's not very star spangled. It's not very, this will
Yeah.
cure this. It's just science based. And there's also often places like the Royal Osteoporosis Society. You can look up bona fide places like the British Nutrition Foundation. I know this because I'm a dietitian and I have a qualification in this subject. So if I was looking for a plumber, I wouldn't know what to look for. Or
Yeah.
someone who was qualified in mental health, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't know which qualifications to look for and which websites are the most appropriate. But if you stick to ones which are trusted professional bodies, that's where you're going to likely get the most sensible and research-based advice and the most up-to-date, because if anything changes in the world of osteoporosis, you will get it on the Royal Osteoporosis website, just as you would with Diabetes UK, or if you were looking at the Celiac UK, or any of those websites which are based in science. And that's a trusted source is essential. And actually, talking about celiac disease, some people can be at risk of not getting enough vitamin D through diet alone in winter months, because they have perhaps a problem with absorption. So if you have celiac disease, which is undiagnosed, you won't be absorbing any vitamin D from your diet, potentially. And then if you have Crohn's disease, or if you're taking certain medications, they may impact on your absorption of vitamin D. So, for example, some treatments for epilepsy, some cholesterol lowering drugs, they can actually impact on your absorption. So again, it's back to this nuanced detail of vitamin D, where you do have to look at your own individual situation.
That is really interesting because I know a few people with like chronic conditions, and like I'm gluten intolerant, like not a celiac, but I do know that it feels like, and I feel definitely the older I get and kind of the closer into my 30s that I get, the more I'm kind of thinking of my health as like kind of the most important thing. But it's not even just, it's not like longevity, like I want to live forever. It's more just kind of thinking about your healthy gut, your microbiome, like all this kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I do feel like, I think we're all like a little bit more flippant in our early 20s of how we take care of ourselves. But it's like the further I get into this, the more I see like social media influencers promoting supplements and gummies and things that they take. And even now, like you can get the gummy version of the GLP-1 medications and things that make it almost seem like it's not a big deal. If you're taking it in a gummy form, it doesn't feel as serious. And I don't really understand like the legal requirements around why everyone is allowed to promote a vitamin that, really, like if you're deficient in a nutrient or if you have a chronic condition, like that should be something that you go through your doctor or your dietitian, your nutritionist
Yeah.
to find out, rather than someone who's
Weird.
been paid on an Instagram ad to do it.
Here's the thing. I do something like that, I'd be thrown out of my professional bodies. So the British Dietetic Association would quite rightly evict me in a nanosecond, and so would the Association for Nutrition. Absolutely, they'd be absolutely within their rights to do that. So if you don't have anything to lose, because you're not going to be thrown out of a professional body because you haven't joined one in the first place and you haven't done the study that requires you to join, then you've got nothing to lose. And so what's going to happen to you? No one's going to come and get you, because there's nobody challenging you, and you haven't got any rules and regulations to abide by. So again, the thing that can help protect the public is going to people who are qualified in their subjects. And the problem with us lot, as it were, the dietitians and the registered nutritionists with the Association for Nutrition, is that we don't have anything particularly massively exciting to say, because good nutrition essentially comes down to the same thing wherever you are in the world. Whether you look at the food representation of healthy eating in India or Australia or France or Spain or Italy or wherever you go in the world, Japan, it pretty much comes down to the same things, albeit in different in different types of foods. You will have a recommendation to have starchy carbohydrates, mostly whole grain. You will have recommendation to have lots of fruit and vegetables. You'll have recommendations to have enough calcium in your diet. So that might be in milk products. It might be in milk alternatives, so plant-based milks which are fortified. And there be a push towards having vegetable-based proteins, but still having a little bit of meat and fish and things as well. That really doesn't change wherever you are in the world. So you may be advised to have rice in a South Asian culture, whereas you might have potatoes in Northern Europe. But essentially, it's the same stuff, and it's not massively exciting. Wherever you go, it's the same structure that gives you a healthy, balanced style of eating. And then if you've got that, then the other stuff is it is country by country. So that information I was giving you about vitamin D is specific to the UK, because where we are with the latitude and because the impact on the sun. And actually, it's very interesting what you're saying about if you are, for example, particularly careful about covering up in the summer, which you would absolutely be entitled to be with fair skin, and then I can see why you'd be thinking, actually, maybe I should have vitamin D supplement all year round. And if you stick to the 10 micrograms a day, that's not going to harm you. So unfortunately for us, good, solid nutrition advice is often a little bit tedious, and it doesn't come with all the bells and whistles that would get you instant attraction and millions of hits on a website, or whatever it is these days, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Because it's not selling you anything other than just sensible advice. And that's a difficult sell. It's a really difficult sell. So we end up sort of, trudging along on our little boring old treadmill saying the same thing. And honestly, this hasn't changed since the 1980s when I was at university. It's the same stuff. It hasn't changed because our bodies haven't changed. We still need the same basic nutrition and the same basic food groups to keep us healthy. And it's that kind of acceptance that is just how it is. And I think about how my grandma and my granddad used to eat, and it was just 3 meals a day. And it was basically following that,
Yeah.
the Eat Well guide that we now have in a pictorial form. That if you look around the world, there are some fantastic examples of how they represent it. In Japan, they have a spinning top. And they have the foods that we should eat less of at the bottom and the ones we should have more of at the top. And they also have a little man running around or person running around at the top, which represents exercise. So some countries include exercise and some mention alcohol, some don't. But it's the same basic nutrition advice because basically we're all the same. We need the same essential balance to our diet. But things like vitamin D is probably the one nutrient which would change depending on where you are, where the latitude of the country is that you're living in.
Well, thank you so much. That was incredibly interesting, and I think it was really informative for people as well. And that is all from us today at the Wellness Report. Please subscribe for more interviews just like this one.